they get that building stored away with Waterford yet? Do you know?
What building?
Building.
He's sending an email today. Paul, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, he can't get the chiefs together.
Oh, yeah. About 6 o'clock.
We're all set. Everything's going.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, you ready? Mike, commissioners? Ready? Sean? Madam Clerk? No?
Yes, I am.
Let's see what's up.
I need a beer.
Yeah. I think I'm.
Town of Vernon Board of Supervisors and Plan Commission meeting will come to order. All rise for pledge of flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Chairman Thomas Byrd.
Let's do the supervisors first, then let's do Plan Commission.
Chairman Thomas Byrd.
Present.
Supervisor Gary Wildy.
Present.
Supervisor Ed Moline.
Present.
Supervisor Bill Craig. Mr. Chairman, I'll note for the record that you do have a quorum of your board, and at this time Supervisor Jeff Milley is not present.
Okay. All right.
On Plan Commission.
Plan Commission, please.
Chairman Thomas Byrd.
Present.
Supervisor Commissioner Bill Craig.
Here.
Supervisor Commissioner Jeff Millies is absent at this time. Commissioner Megan Johnson.
Here.
And Commissioner Merle Wagner. Mr. Chairman, do you have a quorum of your Plan Commission?
All right, thank
And
you.
Zoning Administrator Sean Malarkey is here also.
Open meetings compliance law.
Mr. Chairman, the agenda was posted inside and outside the Vernon Town Hall to the media, to businesses within the Town of Vernon, and on the Town of Vernon's website. You're in full compliance with the open meetings law.
Miscellaneous matters. Following matters will be discussed and possible action taken by the Vernon Town Board of Supervisors and the Vernon Plan Commission unless otherwise noted. Item A. Representative from the Wisconsin DNR to explain how the department determines navigability and also determination related to Millbrook navigable determination. All right. Is the DNR representative here?
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. Good evening, everybody. I'm Travis Schrader with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. I've recently taken promotion, but I've served as the water management specialist for Waukesha County. So I'm here at the request of your town clerk. You guys were curious as to how navigability determinations are made You're sure.
Sorry, Travis.
Excellent. No, that's fine. So I'm going to go through the real basics on how these navigability determinations are made. I assume that most of you are most curious about how the determination was made for the project on Millbrook, correct?
Yeah.
All right. Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources makes navigability determinations. It's one of the unfunded services that the department provides to private landowners and to governmental agencies. Anybody can request this. There's no requirement to be a governmental agency. There's no requirement to have a project, anything like that. If you're curious, if you believe it might be or it might not be, you can request this determination. So, the navigability determination, navigable by law, is stated as having defined bed, defined banks, and the capability of floating a craft on a recurring basis. Through case law, it's been defined a recurring basis is generally in spring freshets, so snowmelt. Also, anything that's marked as a perennial waterway on a USGS map is considered to be a public waterway or a navigable waterway. So when these come in, generally they come in as a one-page sheet with a map. We ask for permission, if needed, to access the property and make this determination. This determination has a lot of importance to it, as I'm sure you're all aware. There's zoning implications, but there's also a lot of other laws, specifically Chapter 30 of Wisconsin state statutes that gets enacted on only public waterways. So, generally what happens is a map review is done. You look at the maps for the area and see how much water is in this waterway. We're looking for, at a bare minimum, a waterway of about 3 feet wide and 4 inches deep at what's known as the ordinary high water mark. The ordinary high water mark is that spot on the bank which the water leaves a continuational presence. It's not where the water is at its highest, it's where it is on average in layman's speak. Okay? That ordinary high water mark also has significant regulatory implications. Below that are waters of the state that are held in trust for the public of Wisconsin. So these waters are able to be used for fishing, swimming, hunting, recreating, and they're protected as such. Navigability, as I was saying, starts with a map review and then goes to what's known as a field review, should it be needed. The field review, you visit the site, you look for the conditions. Are the conditions there? Defined banks, defined bed, and the capability of floating a craft on a recurring basis. If those are there, then it's known as navigable in opinion. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources trains water management specialists such as myself to understand the biological indicators and those factors that determine the ordinary high water mark on waterways such as this. Very simply put, we take a look at it and we look at it and say, would this float a boat or a craft of the smallest being, a kayak generally, in the spring under heavy water, and is there an ordinary high water mark on it? If somebody disagrees with our determination, there is the ability to appeal our determination through what's known as the declaratory ruling process, which is basically a legal process in which the public can ask for us to float the stream, or it can ask for a review, a legal review of our determination and all the factors that went into it. By law, all of these navigability determinations and ordinary high water marks are now required to be posted on our website, and they can all be found under what's known as our surface water data viewer on the Wisconsin DNR website. On this GIS program, you pull up a layer that says navigability determinations, and it has a little dot there. So, let's talk specifically about the project on Highway ES, correct?
Mm-hmm.
The project on Highway ES was sent to me by the Waukesha County Zoning Department. I'm guessing, I was not told, that there's shoreline zoning implications. Most of the time, that's why those are sent to me. Looking at it, these ponds are connected and look to be the headwaters of Artesian Brook. In the aerial photos that I reviewed, which are the current aerial photos and past aerial photos, There is quite a bit of water in this stream, and it is easily looked to be able to float down this stream. No permission was granted for me to access the site. The county only sent it to me, and from an aerial photo review, it seemed to be a pretty straightforward and easy review that this waterway was navigable. Wisconsin DNR has also issued permits for the creation of these ponds on that waterway. The issuance of the permit would signify that in the past this was reviewed as well and was considered to be a navigable waterway, or Artesian Brook is considered to be a navigable waterway. Does anybody have specific questions about it that I could help you through?
I did.
Yes, sir.
If we understand it correctly, the ponds were determined to be navigable waterways quite some time ago.
Yes, sir.
Now, the connecting waterway, be it the Artesian waterway, river, whatever, is now being determined to be a navigable waterway. Why wasn't it done so when the ponds were created? Why so late after the ponds is this now being looked at? What brought it up
What brought it up?
first, and why is it now?
So I will say that I can't speak for the determination that was done previously. Sometimes property owners are very specific in when they ask you to review something for a specific portion of their property. Looking at the conditions that were present today are what led to my determination, in that the conditions I saw in that aerial photo appear to be a navigable waterway.
What got you to look at that?
What got me to look at that?
Yeah.
It was the request from Waukesha County Planning and Zoning.
It was Waukesha, not an individual of the property owner.
No.
Property owner.
No.
And did they say why at this point in time?
They had said that someone had,
There was a
it
development in the town
a
of Vernon.
development in the town, and it was one of 3 or 4 that I was asked to take a review at.
I think that's when.
MW.
But remember?
MW Marine.
MW
Oh,
wanted
that triggered it?
to-
Yeah.
I didn't know that
to,
property owner.
Do those, storage in buildings in the back there, and also wanted to do boat storage on there, and change that change the zoning on there. The county, then, that's what triggered the delineation.
I just thought it was rather strange when we sat through the first meeting.
Yep, I just want to,
Go ahead.
Chairman, I apologize for jumping in. I just want to, the delineation. Most folks, when you say the word delineation, their mind thinks of a wetland delineation. We made the determination, it's a navigability determination.
Navigability.
Yep.
Okay.
So if you say delineation, a number of folks, especially in my field, will go to a wetland delineation, which is something that I don't know was done, so I wouldn't comment on that. Just want to be clear.
Yeah, the curiosity came from, we know it was quite some time ago, I guess, that the ponds were identified as navigable.
Yep.
And the stream was left undetermined. Seemed kind of strange to us.
Yep, and a lot of times, if it's a named waterway or something like that, they won't even ask. They just know that it's a navigable waterway, and there's not even a reason to make that determination. And some people, when they look at a pond, or if the pond's not quite connected, if a pond is simply off just a little bit, they'll say, is this navigable as well? But if it's, we don't get many requests for the Fox River. Is the Fox River navigable? It's kind of just assumed.
Yeah.
So it's potential that that was assumed by a property owner, or it wasn't asked for to the regulator in the past.
So Planning Commission looked at this in the old days, would look at that waterway and say, it's not defined as navigable, so your shoreland zoning, is that the right word I'm looking for, is not affected by a waterway. Now, it's a waterway. Guess what? Your shoreland zoning is now affected by the waterway. Isn't that kind of unfair to change that statement, kind of like that?
The department doesn't go around and look at every waterway and just declare navigability or not navigable. And also, there are situations that change. Some streams, when the hydrology changes,
Yeah.
the water is disappearing. Or sometimes when you build, it's not a specific example, but if you have a subdivision, the subdivision takes more impervious surface, channels that water into a swale, and it erodes enough that it has the characteristics of navigable waterway and connects to the Fox River. There's potential to create a navigable waterway as well.
But this wasn't the case here.
No.
As far as I
Not
just,
that I-
it was some of the questions that popped up during the last meeting that nobody seemed to have an answer for,
Yes, sir.
which is why it was asked.
Yes,
Because
sir.
it seems strange that, you know, you had two ponds, maybe more, and waterways connecting it. All of a sudden, we got people coming in saying, what's this new shoreline zoning, 1,000 feet or whatever it is, why?
Yeah.
And we didn't have an answer, so here you are.
Yeah, and I'll say that these requests come in fairly often. I'll bet you we've done somewhere around 25 in the last 3 months. There are a lot of waterways in the southeast region area that just haven't been looked at, or a property owner just hasn't had the reason to have this determination made. If you have a farm and you've just always been out there putting your crops in, it never really mattered, you sell to a developer, and now if you have a ditch or a stream, that matters to him because now he has zoning restrictions.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, we have people here from the division, I think, that came up here, so I don't know if they have
Yeah.
any questions.
Well, I'll ask if they have any questions.
I'm done.
We'll open it up to them, but I want to know if you guys have any more questions for.
When you do the navigability plan, are you taking into account at all the high water mark? In other words, let's say that the last 3 weeks, we'll move back to the month of April and you're doing your floatability study. Obviously, everything will flow in there at that time.
yeah.
But what if the high water mark is 12 inches below what the actual flowing water is at the time you do the study?
So as general rule, we don't like to use the conditions you see today. You know, when most of the state has a flood emergency, and in fact, the governor declared emergency, a state of emergency for flooding for the whole entire state. As a staff member, that's something you need to take into account because you need to verify those defined banks and defined bed. And that's something that we try to impress upon folks is that there's a lot of ditches and farm fields that you could float a canoe on right now, unfortunately. And those aren't meant to be regulated as navigable waterways. So what we need to verify is, are the conditions right to make this determination? And are the conditions that lead to the determination of a navigable waterway present? So we need to be able to see that defined bed and defined bank. A lot of times in the spring, you'll get snow, you'll get rain, the water comes up, it's really flashy, or it comes up fast and goes down, and you just won't be able to see what you need to see, and you'll have to make another visit. Other times, it's dry. It's bone dry in the middle of summer, and you show up, there's no vegetation growing, there's no water, but you see some of the biological indicators, some of the roots that are growing at such an angle to indicate that there's water presence, some of the plant difference to indicate that there's water at certain times. You see a marker on some of the stones, or everybody's seen some of the bridges and some of the pier posts that have water lines on them because the water's there quite often, and you do that determination. So we try to use the most conducive conditions when we can to make those determinations. There's always, of course, those situations where folks don't have the time, and you need to make that determination, or we rely on what we see in aerial photos and things of that nature. So, does that explain the question?
Pretty much so, yeah. So basically, if you're out there and when a typical rainfall, the water's at the standard water mark, acceptable water mark,
Ordinary.
and that kayak will not float. It's ruled non-navigable, I would assume then, correct? Under
Yes.
normal conditions.
Yes. However, the only thing I'll caution is that there are obstructions to navigability. There's beaver dams, there's trees that fall down, there's things like that. So when you're looking at it, you need to take those into account as well. The other thing we try to take into are, has there been a modification in the past that's resulted in less or more water? A lot of times you'll see certain situations where they hold so much water back that you start to lose those conditions. Or if you have a bad storm, tornado, thunderstorm, where it drops a lot of trees, the boat might not float, but the conditions are all there. And just like in any river, you have to factor that in as an obstruction to navigation and take that into account in the determination.
So there's a certain amount of subjectivity to the whole thing, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and what the number one thing that we try to use is the public person test. And if I can explain it to you and it's reasonable, you should be able to agree on what I see in that determination. So, but you do have the ability to object to my determination and take it to that declaratory ruling process, and that's why that process is in effect.
how detailed a process and how long does a process like that go?
It goes quite a while. It's more of a courtroom setting, so to
Are you
speak.
talking a year or two or 6 months? Or-
Yeah, you're probably looking at a year or two. You know, the way it's looked at is the state is given the chance to float the stream under optimal conditions, which if it's right now and optimal conditions would be present in snow melt, then that could be till March. So it can take a little bit longer that time. So
In regard to making a determination of a navigable waterway, can it be reversed? And can that land be gone back once it's been, say all those incidents disappear, you know, can that determination be reversed?
They build a dam, reroute a river.
Yeah.
it's interesting you would say that. Build a dam. I'm not sure you know this, but there's some legislation passed, some 3010 legislation that was passed, and it talks about that. So if you have a non-navigable determination with a dam on that stream, and the department has made that determination, the department has to live with that determination now until that dam is removed. But yes, you're right, the conditions can change. Conditions do change. So that's why sometimes we do end up looking at things 10 years later, 4 years later, 3 years later. So,
Now we're going to,
yes, sir.
a time frame in regard to determinations.
We don't really have a time frame as far as when we look at things. We try to be as prudent with our workload and our resources as possible. And if we've looked at something recently and there's no great justification for why we're looking at it again.
Right, thank you.
So you, Travis, you said that both of those ponds
The one
were
I was looking at.
the one that is in question.
Yeah, that'd be
Those were reg, and those are not natural. They were permitted. I mean, you had a permit and
Yeah.
they were dug out.
Yeah. Based on the history that I saw in the aerial photos, if you look on the Waukesha County WebView map, they look to be modified.
So what if somebody filled that in?
Oh, sorry.
What if somebody filled that in? And that's a great question. So there's a mechanism to fill them in. However, the filling of natural waterways and navigable waterways, when you enclose something, if you get rid of it wholly, that's what's known as an enclosure under Chapter 30, and that's only able to be applied for by a municipality. Otherwise, if you were going to do a pond modification, that's something that could be applied for, a miscellaneous structure, and you could recreate that stream channel. But what we would look at is, if you're going to take the artificial part of your pond and modify it, that's fine, but we still need to maintain that channel or maintain the original part of Artesian Brook and to keep that stream status there. I don't see how through a permit review we wouldn't come out with this is detrimental to the public interest on a review of filling in the whole entire pond and waterway.
I had asked the question.
No, absolutely.
So, supervisors have any questions? Any more for Travis?
I guess my final question would be, properties that have been affected after the fact, the homes were built in the 60s, 70s, when these were not classified as navigable streams. They now are, in some cases, dividing parcels, dividing buildings. Because of navigability all of a sudden, what recourse do these people have with these value lots? They've got to go through your restudy process and hope it's reversed. In other words, there could be you've got 50 roofs shedding water all of a sudden within a 100-yard radius that were not there when this home was built, for these homes. They now are subjected to more water, but by calling it a navigable waterway, their value is devastated.
They've lost the use of something.
Yep, and I understand that. And that's something that it's not accounted for in the navigability determination, and unfortunately it doesn't have a bearing on that determination. The determination itself is to look at what those resources are on site and do they meet that definition of navigability. And I understand there are zoning implications, but those aren't to be taken in when making that navigability determination. Either way, good or bad. For every one that we impact, there's another person that calls us and says, we really wish it was navigable so we could restrict whatever they're doing here. We would like to have some recourse. So it works both ways. It's just not applicable to us. We can only look at the facts that we see in the waterway and not the implications or whether the determination should have been made 30 years ago, if that makes sense.
Well, it doesn't. The logical part you're describing makes sense, but the injustice at the end of the story is what's bad. And just to give you an example what I'm concerned about, at the south end of the town of Vernon right now, there have been probably 10 or 12 new homes constructed very near a creek that flows powerfully 24/7 nonstop. I'd be extremely surprised if the DNR would not call it a navigable stream. To my knowledge, no study has been done, but yet I've heard via a party who has knowledge of what the development would be in an adjacent community, but it's going to affect Vernon hugely. And what concerns me is I've heard secondhand that the developer is going to proceed with more development, up to 25 or 30 homes in that same area. And we're talking homes now that have been raised, the footings have been raised 8 to 10 feet above normal grade, because the mill pond's across the road, and that water table's at about 2 feet below grade. So, can I count on the DNR saying, hey, wait a minute, you're going to put this on hold till we call this one way or the other? Or is there a way someone can get around this guideline? This little stream carries a lot of water 24/7. I've never seen it anywhere near dry.
So Supervisor, in respect to your question, if the town of Vernon wishes to request that determination, that's something the department would make, yes. As far as would we let them do it or would we not let them do it, I can't really give you an answer on that. That's not really in my jurisdiction. I think that's more in, there's a lot of variables to your question, and the state of Wisconsin does have wetland laws. The state of Wisconsin has laws that regard development adjacent to a waterway, specifically the grading of 10,000 square feet within 75 feet or less of the waterway. It has rules regarding ponds within 500 feet of a navigable waterway, and those are some of the more common ways Wisconsin DNR gets engaged. Wisconsin DNR, our stormwater division, also deals with subdivisions or land disturbing construction activities over an acre. A lot of times when those folks get engaged and they see signs that, hey, maybe there's a waterway, hey, maybe there's a wetland out there, they engage our department, the Waterway and Wetland Department. Your zoning folks, I heard at roll call, Sean might make that determination, should the town want to know for their zoning purposes, or if the county is doing the zoning, the county may make that request to us as well. So,
can we request that determination even though the bigger part of the problem will start outside of our township and then come through the township?
Yeah.
We can still make the request.
Yeah. Wisconsin DNR does not say the town of Vernon, or Bill Craig, supervisor number 4, is limited to district number 4. It doesn't, that's not the way it operates. You can request that determination. The tough thing that I might come back and ask is, can you get me access to this property should it be needed to take an on-site look at the conditions? Mm-hmm. Or I may have to do a little bit of legwork if we simply can't, and it's very prudent that it needs to be made. So we try to get permission if we're going to go out and take a look at something, because we don't have any sort of trespass authority. All right, we're common people, much as everyone in the room. So, but that is a determination that can be requested, and the Wisconsin DNR can make it.
But you have no jurisdiction as far as permit issuing or anything if you do qualify something as navigable stream, and it's affecting surrounding properties?
So the determination says navigable or non-navigable. Navigable kicks in that set of statutes, chapter 30. So if you're doing an activity that falls under chapter 30, Wisconsin DNR has a permitting authority there. But as far as if you're building a house, just a single family house, 300 feet, unless it's wetland, I don't see where it would be over an acre, and we wouldn't have anything, no permit authority for, just because there's a navigable waterway there, your house needs a permit. That's more of a local zoning, at the county level. If you're within so many feet of a waterway, you're doing this many square feet, that's where your zoning takes over, or the county zoning, so to speak.
I have a question for you. You keep talking about access to land, but these are navigable, and they're obviously navigable, the
Yeah.
waterways, when you visually look at them?
Yeah.
Don't you float them?
Not all the time.
But does it happen? Because that would definitely satisfy the depth issue, right?
Yeah.
Where that's kind of hard to satisfy if it's a 50-foot wide stream and you're on a bank.
Yeah, a lot of times, if we're gonna float something, there's not really a question to it.
You're pretty much convinced that, but you verify with a float.
If we can, if needed, but not all the time. I would say most of the determinations we make are navigable opinion. They send us out there in the summer, it's dry, their consultant, their town planner, their county zoning, somebody feels like there's conditions out there, they've had a wetland delineation, it's been brought to them, department, please look at this, we visit.
So it's your visual impression of what, okay.
Yes, professional determination.
Yeah.
So, commissioners, would you like to ask any questions?
I'm satisfied.
Sean, you want to ask?
I was just going to add one other point in terms of DNR oversight, and when obviously the town doesn't have a shoreline zoning ordinance, it's villages and cities and counties that do, but when those get developed, it's the DNR that basically approves those ordinances that get set aside. So when you're looking for setbacks from waterways or navigable waterways, the DNR has oversight when those get approved. Recently we did one when the town of Windsor became the village of Windsor, and they used to be administered by Dane County. The village of Windsor suddenly needed to have their own shoreline and floodplain ordinance. That was something that we worked through the DNR to get approved in terms of setbacks and everything else. So that's their oversight when it comes to zoning ordinances, is they're the ones that actually approve the restrictions and so on to make sure it complies with state statutes and so on.
Commissioners and town board members, I'd like to open up because there's a lot of constituents here, I think, that came to here.
Yep.
And open it up for if they have any questions. So, I just want does anybody have any questions out there for the representative from the DNR, Travis? Could you please state can we give her a microphone?
Nope.
So somebody, we don't
I
have a
can talk real
microphone?
loud.
Good. Or if you
Have her
want
come up, have her come up here.
yeah, if you want to come up and sit there and state your name, and we want to make sure that everybody can hear you, that's what we want to do.
My name is Cindy Rux, the last name is RUX, and I'm on Garrett Drive, and our property is affected by this new potential rezoning. My question is, it sounds to me like you could see some dredging that had been done on apparent ponds that may have affected this navigability. Who is allowing people to do this dredging that could potentially be changing that stream? I mean, it was, when we purchased our property, it was considered an intermittent stream at that time, and now it's navigable. And I've heard that there had been some dredging done. Why is that allowed, that could potentially affect other people in the surrounding area? And who is okaying that ability?
Good question. So
Is that done?
no, that's fine.
Yeah, we need to have
Yeah, we need to hear him.
we need to hear his answer to that, please. Thank you. Thank you for your question.
So if the dredging that was done, it was authorized under a permit to create a pond, and the permit was done approximately in the 80s somewhere. It's hard to tell which year they actually completed it, but the permit was issued in 1980. The state wetland laws went into effect in 1991. So it's pre-wetland laws. So now it's much more difficult to create a pond out there. But if you look at a project like this and you say, will it be detrimental to that stream? Will the removal of sediment and the removal of this vegetation be detrimental to Artesian Brook? Then you can allow the creation of that pond. Now, I don't know what factors were used in the creation of that pond. I don't have that permit in front of me. But today, it might be looked at slightly different. I believe Wisconsin DNR has looked at Artesian Brook, and there is cold water remnants there. And the creation of a pond, a large water body with the sun beating on it, puts warm water into a cold water system. That's not the greatest. So there are situations where that can help, though. If there's a lot of sediment, a lot of nutrients, and you want to have that drop out prior to being pushed downstream, it can take some of those nutrients and that sediment out. And since it's a natural low spot, that can be advantageous to that stream as well. So there are situations where wetlands can be, the habitat can be modified, a stream can be modified in years past where that was acceptable.
But it sounded to me, and I heard this secondhand, that it may have been more recent than the 80s, that some dredging was done. So could a person on their private property all of a sudden go in, do some private dredging that could have changed this navigability in the last 10 years?
So based off my review, there's some modification that's been done. Should people be doing this without authorizations? No. Do things get done without the proper authorization? Yes. But in today's world, we have aerial photos that are flown every year. If there's something we see that shouldn't have been done, and it's within our statute of limitations, then that's something we can pursue. Now, what I saw was older than our statute of limitations, which is 7 years for this. Now, the work that was done shouldn't affect the determination. This is the headwaters. What it could have done is taken a complex that had flow at the edge and enlarged it and created what's known as a connected enlargement, or it's connected to the stream and they've enlarged it. These happen, but it would add just that portion of the pond to the determination. Based on the old determination, or the old aerial photos that we've seen, there always was a water feature there. The water had flowed through there. So the only thing I can use is what we have now and our aerial photos we have now in today's conditions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not the answer you want to hear, probably,
Yeah.
but
I just want to hear that other people aren't changing it down the road and impacting us.
Does anybody else have any questions for Travis?
Travis, did you see those ponds in the Millbrook are the headwaters for the Artesian?
it looked like they were the headwaters of that stream, yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, if we don't have any other questions.
All right, I thank you guys for your time, and you have a great night.
Thank you, Travis.
Thank you for coming and explaining to us.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Have a great night.
Thank you. So that leaves us, item B on the agenda. Vernon Town Board action for proposed zoning classifications as presented by the Waukesha County Department of Parks and Land to closely match the existing town zoning designation for the properties affected. So, do you want, Sean, to just kind of clarify that one?
Sure. So what's being proposed here is in the new areas that are now determined navigable, the 1,000 feet from the ponds and the 300 feet from Millbrook. The county came forward the last meeting when the public hearing was held, and basically stated that things are going to be changing for those ponds, that 1,000-foot area, and the designations that are going to be put in place are the same designations as the town currently has for the zoning. So the zoning categories are essentially going to be the same. When they were environmental corridor before, there'll be environmental corridor now. Where there were rural residential before, there'll be rural residential now, and R1 before, there'll be R1 now. They'll just be under the county zoning districts versus the towns. Now, those categories and those districts are largely the same, but they're not exactly the same. There's some subtle differences between the two, and I think what was mentioned last time is the county uses building footprint measurements versus the town's floor area ratio measurements. The town we're anticipating moving toward that same system that the county has now, so that will be a match eventually. So again, we're changing districts, but they're the same designations in the county as they were the town.
Okay, I'm going to read what Mr. Macy said here. This is a policy decision. The town board action is only a recommendation to the county. Only the town board action is needed since the plan commission already acted on this matter. Now, the plan commission did already say that they recommended to adopt this to the town. Okay. So, if you remember, then we said, no, let's find out how they did that, because we had constituents that wanted to know, so we didn't act on it. So the county has done nothing on it since we didn't act on it. They're waiting for us to respond to it, right. Then if the town is wanting to object to the county's request to the zoning, please table the matter so that I can research what, if any, action can be taken to object to the rezoning. Well, if we send this to Mr. Macy, it's going to cost a lot of money, and I don't think.
What he just said, it's not going to be.
You can't fill that in. That creek is there. It's been dredged. It isn't going to change. So, gentlemen, what do you want to do?
Yeah, we kind of tight.
What triggered it was M&W Marine wanting to do that zoning change.
Yeah.
And then the county said, okay, well, let's get and find out about those waterways. And that's what triggered the whole thing.
That's what I was waiting for him to say when I said, what started the whole.
Well, that's, M&W did it. So.
Yeah.
Well, you can't blame M&W, they were doing it because that was part of the county, and county wanted to know. It was asking questions.
So that brings it back to why, and I couldn't answer that last time.
Well, now we know why and what.
Sean, doesn't that in effect make all those properties non-conforming?
No, it does not.
Are they grandfathered?
Well, they operate now under county zoning instead of town zoning, where the standards are almost identical in any way. They allow the same uses, setbacks and offsets are the same, impervious surface and how much building footprint you can put are essentially the same. So they're almost identical categories. There's no non-conforming uses that I know of. I'm not saying that there potentially could be, depending on how much development would be on a particular site, but in essence, the only thing that changes is the fact that if they want to build a new shed or get a zoning permit for something, they'd have to go to the county instead of the town if they're under county shoreline jurisdiction. The building permits would still be obtained through the town, but it wouldn't necessarily create non-conforming uses.
But they'll have to meet the new offset requirements.
Which are the same as the towns.
Okay. So if I was R1 before, I'm now R1/shoreline.
Yep, county R1 shoreline, where your setbacks are 50 feet and your offsets are 20 feet, the same as the town.
Okay.
And this doesn't hinder anybody if they want to put another building on their property, or?
Well, potentially. I mean, the thing is that we have certain rules for how many buildings you can put on and how many square feet of accessory building you can put on there, and so on and so forth. That may be slightly different with the county. It may be more and it may be less, depending on certain circumstances. But the major things in terms of how you get to use your property, what uses are there, what the main setbacks are pretty much the same. So if you, however you enjoy your property now is pretty much how you're going to be able to enjoy it in the future.
I missed something. I thought this 1,000-foot increased, what was it, from 7, what was the old, before the 1,000 feet came in?
Well, the stream was 300 feet.
So it was 300 feet of your property that was non-usable for building in the past.
Not usable. No. Just means that 300 feet is under county shoreline zoning jurisdiction.
And they're not gonna allow you to build it.
Yeah, sure you can. You just can't build a certain distance from the high water mark of the pond or the
You can now
stream.
move to 1,000
So all the
feet.
1,000 feet means, or the 300 feet means, is that you're under county rules versus town rules. You can still build there. You still can't build right up next to the creek or right up next to the pond. But it just means you get your zoning permit for the county versus your zoning permit from the town. That's all this is about.
Okay.
Do we know approximately how many properties this is affecting?
I don't know. You guys, the map that you have there, if you take a look at the bubble, that'll give you an idea. It's probably
Yes.
20 to 30 properties in total.
It's right in this map.
Yeah, it doesn't show the property line.
No. I'm just curious, so it actually reverts back to what we originally got out of the county zoning. Now these property owners are back in county zoning.
Correct, which is the same as many other properties in the town that are under county zoning. If they're close to, if there are floodplains, close to a brook, a stream, a pond,
A lot of
a lot of that.
Yeah.
It'd be a surprise for some people when they show up. So, gentlemen, what do you want to do?
You need a motion?
Yep.
Let's see if I can word this right. I make a motion to accept the planning commission judgment on the county zoning request. How do you want to word that?
Concurring with Plan Commission's
Concurrent with
approval of
that.
the proposed zoning classification as presented to the
Exactly.
Washington County Parks and Land Use Department with the contingency that with that, yep.
Concurrent with theirs.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. All right. Item C. Plan Commission and Town Board action. Site plan of operation request for existing signage and electronic insert to current sign located at Big Ben Elementary School at West 230 South 8695 Big Ben Drive in the town of Vernon. Sean?
Paul, you want to come up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what's being requested, there's an existing sign near the corner of Big Ben, and it's near the southeast corner of Big Ben 164 in Edgewood, and the existing sign's about 32 square feet per side, and they're looking to change a portion of the sign out to replace it with an electronic message board insert. The insert itself is about just under 13 square feet in size, so it's just a portion of that sign. Electronic message center signs require the approval of the Town Plan Commission and the Town Board as part of the site plan of operation per our Code of Ordinances. The petitioner came forward at the August 8th meeting and met with the Plan Commission to get some direction on this. I previously told the applicant that this was not permissible based on the way my interpretation of the ordinance. The petitioner came forward and asked the Plan Commission if there's a way to navigate this and allow this to happen, and the Plan Commission gave some direction at the August 8th meeting, and I'll go into specifics here. Right now, in the P1 zoning district where the sign is located and the school is located, we allow 32 square feet of of signage for any one property, or 16 square feet per any one road. Right now, that sign that exists now is 32 square feet in size. There's also a large wall sign along Big Bend Road that together basically have more signs than it would be allowed today under the current code. But the signs that exist today is legal non-conforming because it was approved at a time when it was allowable to have that much signage. So what the code basically says is that for legal non-conforming signs, it's okay to maintain them as they are. However, they're only allowed insofar as until a major change happens. And the way major change is defined in the code, it includes changing the name or size, adding lights, refurbishing, or relocation. And one of the things that was presented at the August 8th meeting for the Plan Commission is this isn't necessarily a major change per that definition. And the Plan Commission at the August 8th meeting made the determination that this was not a major change as described in the code.
Right.
Yeah, let me just...
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were going to...
No, let me just finish my report and we can go into that. So the other thing is that within the P1, electronic message center signs as currently is stated in the ordinance is only allowed in the business districts. Our current zoning ordinance updates that were in draft format contemplates allowing them in the P1 district and then also in the industrial district as well. There is a situation, a provision in the ordinance that allows for waivers for certain things to the sign code. It only allows 25% of size to be modified and only 50% of the setbacks to be modified. They're not asking for that. They're asking for a waiver tonight from the provision that allows these only in the business districts. So the Plan Commission at the August 8th meeting told the petitioner to come forward tonight and request this waiver to be considered tonight. So that's what they're requesting a waiver from, is that the electronic message center sign would be allowed in the P1 district as in addition to the B1 districts. The electronic message center signs does require site plan of operation approval. There's also certain provisions that have to be followed. They cannot be animated, flashing, scrolling, or revolving. They shall be limited to a maximum of 4 lines of text per message, with text characters measuring 5 feet inches or greater in height. They shall only advertise 3 messages or advertisements per day. Each message or advertisement shall be displayed for a minimum of 10 seconds. The display of time and temperature is excluded from the total messages. And then the message advertisements on the sign should be limited to only the marketing, identification, operation of the subject use itself. The petitioners also submitted, since a plan of operation for the existing operations. There's nothing on file with the school right now for a plan of operation, but they have noted that the hours of operation of the school are from 7 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. A total of 58 full-time employees and 10 part-time employees, and a total of 102 parking spaces, of which 60 are employee parking spaces. I've prepared a series of conditions if the Plan Commission chooses to recommend approval of the site plan of operation and signage. One is that the site plan approval would reflect the existing conditions and the proposed Highway 164 freestanding monument signage modifications, that the approval will reflect the information provided for the site plan of operation in the application, that the electronic message center sign modifications shall be constructed in accordance with the plans, specifications, and documents presented tonight, that a special exception would be granted to allow the proposed electronic message center sign in the P1 zoning district, that the sign modifications would comply with all other P1 zoning district requirements, that the electronic message center sign would comply with our electronic message center sign provisions, as I mentioned previously, and then the rest are standard conditions. So in my mind, the big issue tonight is whether or not the waiver would be granted. There are certain things that the Plan Commission and Board would need to consider with the waiver itself. In general, I guess I'll just read the approval that's required for a waiver. And again, we're talking about the waiver for the P1 district. Where property or use on the property or such a special nature, a unique situation, or its effect is so dependent upon actual contemporary circumstances as to make impractical the absolute predetermination or permissibility of listing of special signage standards which would be automatically applied in each case, an application for a special exception would be submitted. So again, this is the limited jurisdiction. You're making a waiver for other circumstances not related to the actual square footage or setback provisions. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioners? Anything? Bill?
No, I just had kind of a related question, how this affects placement of other signs during the year on the property, especially since they don't comply with our size maximum.
They would not be allowed to put any additional separate signage on the property under the current ordinance. Unless the ordinance was changed, they are limited to what they have.
And I'm not faulting the school district for that. There are other people abusing that signage thing. So, okay, thank you.
Okay. Do you want to speak?
First of all, Sean, I appreciate everything you said. You kind of encapsulated that really well. You said one thing and it kind of skipped by my head. One of the waivers was, did you say a contemporary replacement?
So there's only one waiver. The one hang-up I originally had was the major change definition of whether or not it constituted a major change. The Plan Commission found that it did not, in their estimation, constitute a major change. So the only waiver is the fact that it's in the P1 district. So right now they're only allowed in the business districts.
Right.
The waiver would be to allow the sign in the P1 district as proposed.
Right. Yeah, I thought one of the points of that waiver was when there was a contemporary replacement or upgrade, if you will. Is that true, or did I hear something incorrectly?
I don't think so. The only waiver is the fact that it's a different district. That's not really allowed.
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't know what we need to do to proceed, but I would like to submit for the waiver. It's a retrofit in regards to the panel that's up there right now with the cards that you kind of place in. It's what they call a poly panel, or it's a polymer product, milky white, if you will. It's translucent, so it has lighting already showing through it. It also has clear runners, top and bottom, that you kind of put the cards in to make your statement, school starting, September 6th or whatever. If you look at the sign, it also has a lens over the top of it. There was a covering. Those things don't work really well, and I'll be honest with you, because they tend to hold in moisture, they create mold, mildew, and the sun reflects off of the lens, if you will, and it bakes that clear runner. In going out there and looking at it when I did my initial site visit and being out there several times, my only point is that that's got to have to be replaced sometime anyhow. It does. It's not going to last much longer, or it's going to start looking disheveled, green with mold, and I've seen them in various different conditions. What's nice about this was Sean, the principal, and PTO there, they raised the funds for this, okay, to, take this to a different level with a 10-year window now. That's basically the life of an AMC with LED lights. Not to mention the energy savings and everything that comes along with it. So I guess that's my request, to have the waiver compliant so we can start moving forward.
Sean, where do we have other P1 districts in town?
That's north.
Well, the fire station for one is P1.
Here.
The
We're
town
P1,
hall would be
North.
P1. It's mostly governmental type
Okay.
uses.
Can I just ask one question? I'm sorry to interrupt. Also, churches. Aren't a lot of churches in a P1 or residential? I don't know a church without a monument sign. And I'll bet you 90% of them have electronic message boards.
Our churches aren't in P1.
They aren't?
What,
No.
What
Like Vernon Lutheran, Vernon Presbyterian, they're all,
Is it
they're all conditional uses.
Conditional uses within residential
Right.
districts?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just know this is my first time in Vernon, but I know a lot of churches.
But you're right, a lot of communities do have this
No,
P1 or
absolutely.
governmental. Yeah.
They're all over the place.
The gun club, all the blue, see the blue parts? They're all P1s.
Okay, so, plan commission first. Do you want to make a recommendation to the town board?
Are they doing it?
Well, make recommendations for
Do
the
they have to do a
waiver,
waiver?
subject to the conditions that were included in the showings report.
It's in there.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any more discussion from plan commission? Any more discussion? No more discussion? All those in favor of issuing the waiver? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Town board. We have a recommendation from the plan commission to have a waiver and change that to the P1 district and have a sign.
Only thing I have a question about is precedent. You know, establishing a precedent outside, by going in outside of the district and going into another district and allowing it, that. Go ahead, Sean.
The only thing I would add to that is that we're currently contemplating in the last round of zoning code amendments that we discussed, expands that to P1 and to I1. So
In other words,
We talked about that.
we might be
Remember
just,
when we were talking
Yeah.
about that for the electronic signage?
yeah, it's kind of, as I get older, I forgot about that. But it is something I was just wondering.
It's becoming more and more. The old signs are out and this is the new
Yeah.
electronic.
Does it cause much of a distraction in regard to the message as it scrolls or anything as far as driving? People?
No, because it's gonna be timed. I do a lot in Waukesha.
Yeah,
It's not gonna be like flashing at you.
that's what I'm
Yeah,
worried.
there's a time delay where you'll have a message up for 3 minutes, and then you'll have a new message, and I think what Sean said, you have 3 or 4 repeating messages.
yeah, and you'll comply with whatever our
Absolutely.
standards are.
Where we'll have one message up, welcome back to school,
Okay.
and then another message, fireman's fun pancake dinner, and
Minimum
then
10
another-
seconds at a time, so
Okay.
they're not constantly scrolling.
Right, yeah, it won't be a moving, script, if you will. No fireworks, no Santa Claus is dancing across the
Okay,
street.
then.
Well, I've seen them.
Oh, yeah, they're out there.
Yeah.
If I may, I have one concern listening to you that you got into a discussion about the durability of the sign. We didn't talk about tearing it down and building another one. That becomes a different issue as I understand it. So when you started talking about destruction and the sun was going to beat this up and it's only going to last a certain amount of time, blah, blah, blah. We're looking at this as being the end of the program for a while.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the life of that sign is? You're going to be coming back in 2 years and saying, geez, we got to modify this because the sign.
No, that's a good question, yeah. I was actually referring to the current sign and the condition the current sign is in right now.
Yeah.
An EMC, Electronic Message Board Center, the LEDs, first of all, they run on 12 volts, so there's no ballast, no fluorescence. The energy savings is phenomenal, first thing. Second thing, the average life of an electronic message board is 10 years.
Okay.
So you should not have to go in there and touch anything, barring vandalism, on that thing for 10 years.
Okay, is it completely replacing the form of the sign that's there
No.
already? It's an insert of sorts,
If
right?
you look at what they're gonna be replacing, this is gonna stay, correct?
Correct, the top
This
and
is
the
gonna
side.
stay, and the monument that is in the ground, this
So it's
is,
just a three-line.
it's
basically
this
looking
right
there.
here that they're taking out and replacing,
Like
correct?
the white pop, that's a
The white.
poly panel, that white,
Correct.
and that frame around it is the lens that I was talking about earlier, which actually seals everything in.
So we'll just be replacing that frame if you had to for weather sealed or whatever?
Right, well, the EMCs are waterproof, but see, this is the poly panel, that white.
Yeah.
These are the little runners that you put the cards in.
Right.
This is a white frame or a lens that actually covers that up.
Okay.
that when that gets wet, it actually bakes. You know, and it creates mold, mildew,
Okay.
you know, and deterioration. That's all, this whole white area with this frame is all going away, completely. It's gonna be framed in black.
So that issue's gone.
Correct.
All right. When you said wear and tear, I'm thinking, well, we don't.
I was
get into-
actually talking about the existing sign.
Yeah,
Because if you look, these little clear channels,
yeah,
they're actually like that, they hold the
Step
cars
out,
in there, they hold water.
yeah. they
And then when you have the sun baking in there, well, you know, and,
Yeah.
you know, year after year and that kind of thing, they do deteriorate.
Answer my question.
It's actually 76 inches in the length, because he's got the dimensions, so it's 29, so it's actually 30. It's 6 foot by 2 foot 6 insert that's going in there. Okay.
And
So-
the electricity's already there because they live
This,
Yep.
this doesn't concern us, but on your proposal here, you're putting $455 in taxes. I'm sure the school would like to have that back as far as.
Oh, we went back, we changed that. The tax exempt, we have no problem with that. We don't keep the taxes anyhow, so it's
Yeah,
not like.
you have a refund.
Well, we're pretty cognizant of taxes on bills. I think it's
Yeah, I think we already did.
Okay.
You might be looking at a current, the old estimate, and then, you know, all you just send me the form, I'll take the taxes off. I have
Yeah, I
no
think we
problem.
caught that. Just trying to save the school some money.
No.
So, is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve the proposal as submitted by,
From the Plan Commission?
yeah, from the Plan Commission.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
So, Sean, with the P1, that we're gonna give them a waiver and change that, we have to do diligence and get that in the works and make sure that
You get a job in there.
it doesn't get lost in the zoning.
Yeah,
Keep it-
that's underway, but the waiver or the special
Right.
exemption grant tonight would, it bypasses that anyways. But
Right.
yeah, it's already in there, yep.
Okay.
And just a point of clarification, the waiver is part of the approval of the site plan of amendment in their motions, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It's,
Okay, good, I'm fine.
Jonathan Seegler, waiver for accessory building area for the property at West 220 South 7625 Crowbar Drive, located in the town of Vernon. This is Planning Commission action only. Okay.
We just listen.
John?
Okay, so what the petitioner is asking for, there's an existing accessory building on the southwest corner of the site. It's 32 feet by 36 feet. It's a little over 1,100 square feet. I'm sorry, 32 feet by 45 feet. It's a little over 1,400 square feet. They'd like to add on to that to the north. The addition itself would be 32 feet by 36 square feet for a total building size of almost 2,600 square feet. The height of the existing building is about 15 feet 8 inches. The proposed addition is a little taller, 17 feet 8 inches, so 2 feet higher than the existing building. The petitioner has submitted a color rendering of the proposed building showing what it actually shows is a consistent height across the whole building. Since that's been submitted, they've modified it so that the addition is higher than the existing building itself. And there's a revised drawing in the application showing that as well. On the east side of the building and the north side of the building, the petitioner would like to use 36 inches of brick along the base and then also cedar above that to match the house. The west and south side of the buildings would be sided in metal. And then that's essentially screened by existing trees. The petitioner proposes to use the building and the addition for storage of an antique tractor, travel trailer, snowmobiles, and personal use. There's also 2 existing smaller accessory structures on the property that the petitioner is proposing to remove, and there's also an overhang on the west side of the existing building that's going to be added onto, that's in the setback, that will also be removed as part of this. So normally, what the petitioner has is a 2-acre lot. Normally what they're allowed is 1.5% of the lot area can be taken up by accessory buildings. That's 1,300 square feet is what they're normally allowed to have. What they're asking for is 2,592 square feet. So they're asking for a waiver to exceed this. My specific comments, they're in compliance they'll be in compliance with setback provisions for the new building once that overhang is removed. They're not allowed to have any more than 2 accessory buildings. Once they remove those existing 2 smaller structures, they'll be left with 1 accessory structure, so they'll be in compliance with that. The height, they'll be in compliance with height provisions. In terms of the waiver itself, the accessory building section has specific provisions that you have to consider when granting a waiver. You have to consider, but not necessarily have an affirmative finding of the following factors: whether the request of the waiver modification is consistent with the general intent of the chapter, whether the request for the waiver would adversely affect the property owners in the surrounding area, whether the request would benefit the petitioner's project in a way that's not inconsistent with the town's interests, whether the petitioner is in full compliance with other applicable ordinances and agreements, and whether, instead of granting the request or waiver, the chapter itself should be changed to accommodate the kind of situation presented by the petitioner. The petitioner has presented signed letters from surrounding property owners to the west and to the south, stating that they have no issue with the proposed addition to the garage itself. So, if the petitioner chooses to approve the request and the waiver, I have a series of conditions. One is the fact that the determination of the waiver has to be granted according to those 5 provisions I just mentioned. The accessory building would not exceed 2,592 square feet in size and 17 feet 8 inches in height. I have added an additional condition based on Attorney Macy's comments for this. I mentioned previously that the 2 smaller accessory buildings would be removed and the overhang to the west of the building would also be removed. So I've added a condition that's not in your staff report that states that the petitioner shall raise and remove from the subject property the existing 2 smaller sheds and the overhang that's located in the offset on the west side of the building to be expanded within 30 days of occupancy. So those have to be removed within 30 days of the building being completed. That the accessory building would be constructed in accordance with all plans shown tonight. General requirements that have to meet the zoning requirements and so on. That the petitioner shall record a deed restriction on the property in a form approved by the town attorney, giving notice that the use of the accessory building cannot be used for any commercial or industrial purposes. The petitioner shall obtain a preliminary site evaluation from the county. I have not seen that yet. And then standard conditions from there. That's all I have.
Okay. Commissioners. Anything?
So with the size of the lot, he's allowed 1,306. He's asking close to double that.
Correct. He's already over the amount. So
Yes.
his building is 1,440 square feet. He's already over the 1,306, and he's asking for to almost double it.
Right. And then
Correct.
What are the setbacks there?
20 feet.
20 feet.
Yeah, and he meets a setback. He meets all requirements of the ordinance besides the size of the building. And then once he takes that overhang off the existing building.
What
that's
size
his
are those
setback.
2 buildings? How many square feet are in those 2 buildings he's going to take down? I can't remember.
those were included in the square feet of building, right?
Those would be removed.
I'm saying is he was allowed 1,306, but he's over that with And that was including the buildings?
It was not. It was not.
So he's seriously over at this point.
He is.
So what are the sizes of those two buildings, those two sheds? I can't read
I'm
it.
gonna, pull this up, and the petitioner's here as well, and maybe he can shed some light
12
on
by
it.
16 is the shed, the two-car garage, I believe, is a 20 by 20, maybe a little bit over that 21 by 21. And then the overhang on the back, I don't know the exact size, probably 12 by 20. Those were all there when I purchased the property. I was just trying to clean things up and make it.
And what's that other little shed?
12 by 16, I believe that is.
Yeah.
And 24 by 24.
No, about 20 by 21.
Oh, okay.
And both of those sheds are, they're too close to each other. We require 10 feet. They're set too close. The smaller shed is too close to the property line. So that's going to be cleaned up as part of this once those are removed with the overhang, so there won't be setbacks and offsets that are required now. So you're granting a waiver for increasing size. What you get out of it is a little bit of cleanup from those existing structures.
And he's not over the height.
Correct. 18 feet is what's required by the code. I guess I would just also offer that there's a considerable tree line on the west side of the property and then north of the building as well. Much of that is not going to be visible from the property owners, and in addition, I'll just reiterate that he has gotten letters of support from the property owners as well.
And all property owners within 300 feet were notified. What's it? Yeah, nobody's here.
I mean, my main concern, if I was a neighbor, would be if the height was exceeding the limit, and it's not. So I guess I wouldn't have as much of a concern with just a larger floor plan versus if he was exceeding the height of what was allowed.
I wonder if it's worth going through the 5 provisions where you consider waivers, and let's talk about them maybe individually to see what your thoughts are on each of those. So the first one is, if the waiver is granted, would what's being proposed, would it be consistent with the general intent of the chapter? What are you trying to accomplish with the chapter in terms of regulating accessory buildings? And don't pay so much attention to the specific size requirements. So what are you trying to regulate when we talk about accessory buildings? So you want them to be neat and orderly and visually appealing and so on and so forth. So I think that's what should be considered there. And again, you don't necessarily have to find affirmative to each of these, but just consider each of them. The next one is, would they adversely affect property owners in the surrounding area? Would it benefit the petitioner's project in a way that's not inconsistent with the town's interests? Whether they're otherwise in compliance with the ordinances, and instead of granting the waiver, should the zoning ordinance itself be changed to allow that size instead? So that's what you're really basing your waiver on, is those
What is the
factors.
total square footage right now showing without the addition?
1,440 square feet.
That's with the 3 buildings and the existing.
No, that's the existing building, and then you got about 20 by 20, which is 400, and the 12 by 16, which is like 150 or something. So probably close to 2,000 square feet out there now.
I guess in my opinion, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, looks like it'll be a nice building that he's trying to make look more, in compliance with the way his house looks, and he's getting rid of the 2 other smaller structures so we don't have kind of outbuildings all over a lot. And the neighbors don't, when you hear objecting, he does have the letters from 2 of them.
How long have those other buildings been there?
I purchased the property 2 years ago. They've been there, I think the main shop was there since 1990. There was another house there that burnt down. The actual house that I'm in was built in 96. So I think that other 2-car garage was the garage for that house. And then the shed looks like it was stuffed in there at one point. who knows when, but it's, you know, I like the storage that I have there was appealing to me to have those outbuildings, but now that I'm there, I want to have it cleaned up, I want it to match the house, you know, so it doesn't look like an industrial shop out in the driveway, so it looks like part of the property, and then have the whole driveway paved, which is what brought this all up. I want to have the driveway paved, but I'm not going to have the driveway paved until I get the building stuff straightened out. Then I'll have it all repaved.
So two of those buildings were there about 2 years, they were staying with?
All three of them have been there since I've been there. I didn't change anything.
That was one of my questions. How did that happen to get 3 outbuildings on where?
It's been some time ago.
The previous owner has been there for a long time. So,
Yeah, those potentially could have been approved a long time ago, before current ordinances, and obviously was under county zoning at the time.
But with,
that
yeah, we're oversized, but he's taking that shed off the back, he's taking them other 2 sheds down, he's bringing everything into compliance. I don't know, I don't see a problem. He's gonna clean up the outside of it, you're gonna change it to what? You can put brick?
it'll match the house. So the house has brick coming up about 3 feet. The grade changes, so it's higher in some spots, but then there's cedar siding going up through the gables. So I'll match that on the front side that you can see. The back side, it doesn't matter because there's a cedar fence that runs the whole back side of this garage and even where the new addition will be. So no one will see that anyways. I'll leave that to steel siding. And it's getting a whole new roof across the whole thing as well with the new addition, because the roof that's on there now is steel, but it has spots that are rusty and just faded out. So I want it to look clean and new. It needs it either way. So it'll be a steel roof, but the front faces that anyone can see from any point, the road or the neighbors, is going to match the house. It's going to look like it's a garage that's supposed to be there with the house, not an industrial building that's just placed out.
Not a hodgepodge of everything.
Right, and it'll be one building.
Bill, do you have anything?
Well, I was just looking at the increase here in square footage. 80%?
Sure, yeah.
We're increasing the storage amount by 80%.
That seems about right.
Yeah, but you gotta take into effect, Bill, the 2 sheds he's already got that are pretty much useless to him, but you could store something in them. Oh, and that, I did the same thing you did. I took the square foot from the 20 by 20, which is 400, the square foot from the 12 by 16, which is 192, and with that overhang on the back there, that's we consider that square foot too, so that's 240. So you add them all up, that's 832 he's got there right now, and he's only asking for 13, so it's only asking for 400 square foot more than he's got, but he's gonna clean all that stuff up. And he's gonna bring everything back into compliance. I think that's the trade-off, bringing everything back into compliance.
I guess I'd also offer to think about this, to put in perspective. When would you clearly say no to a waiver? If what was being proposed was, if that cedar fence wasn't there, the tree line wasn't there, the neighbors were opposed to this type of a thing, he's adding on to it, and it clearly is on top of the neighbors. The neighbor, would it be 20 feet off the property line? What he's proposing is a large building that's 20 feet off of his property line. The neighbor looking out their kitchen window is staring at this thing. Then you clearly have a reason to say, you know what, this waiver doesn't make any sense because it's impeding on the neighbor's property. They're not looking at a residential garage that's normally allowed. But in this case, there's other circumstances, the cedar fence, the tree line, the neighbors are on board. I'm not saying you should approve this necessarily because that's your decision, but I'm just trying to, how you'd weigh it versus, in a situation where it clearly wouldn't be approved. Because because there's going to be times when there's going to be waivers that'll come before you where you're going to say, you know what, this one clearly doesn't make sense, but you know, maybe this one does because there's certain circumstances here where does it really matter that there's extra square footage here because the site can kind of accommodate it based on the way it's structured.
Are we not setting a precedent?
Certainly. You're certainly setting a precedent for granting waivers, and you're making it known that you are open to granting waivers under certain circumstances, yes.
Which they've done in the past.
2 acre site, and that's, you know, the reason that this provision is in the code is because there are going to be situations where someone says, hey, can I have more square footage? And you're going to say, maybe, and we'll look at these things, we'll look at the neighbors, we'll look at the, you know, how it's affecting others, and so I encourage you to do that as part of this and determine how it's going to affect the neighbors and so on as part of this. But yes, if you grant a waiver on this, and you've granted other waivers before
Yes.
on accessory buildings for size and other things. So.
And they've also denied because of neighbors not liking the size. You've done it both ways. You've denied for specific reasons.
Correct.
And you've approved. So this wouldn't be the first or the last.
That's where I'll express my typical concern. The next one who comes along, we've got to justify it. You know, if we're squaring something existing off, adding 100, 200 feet, who cares? You know, we're looking at a substantial amount here. I don't know. And I'm looking at our 5 conditions, A through E, whether the request would be consistent with the general intent of the chapter. I would say no. There is no hardship of any kind. There is no. And then we drop down to C. If granted, would benefit the petitioner's project in a way that is not inconsistent with the town's interest. I think it is inconsistent because you've got the zoning out there now to protect against this very thing.
Right, but if you're saying not inconsistent with the town's interest, if you say the town's interest is just the zoning provisions that are there now, how could you ever possibly grant a waiver if that's the position you're taking? Is that the town's interest is exactly what the provisions of the code state. The intent of the district is the general intent of what you're trying to protect. By regulating accessory buildings, you're saying they got to be a certain size, they got to be located in a certain place, they got to be of a certain quality. The intent is to protect neighboring property owners and property values based on certain standards. But if you say everything's got to meet the intent of the ordinance, you'll never be able to grant a waiver if every single one has to meet the letter of the law.
And isn't it, in my opinion, I would think it's in the town's interest to not have a bunch of maybe older buildings throughout a property and have something cleaned up and have a single property that looks nicer, that may be a little bit bigger, but you're looking at one nice building that's going to match the house versus random structures that are still on the property that may look messy.
Yeah,
I can understand what he's trying to do.
that's the town's interest. I mean,
I guess it weighs as to what you think.
But the key is we don't allow that anymore. It's 2 buildings period unless you got a historic.
right, but they are grandfathered in. They're there.
Right, no, I understand that.
So Megan's point is the town's interest would be cleaning up those buildings that are sort of haphazard and that violate the setbacks and offsets right now. Part of this project is in the town. It exceeds the size, but part of it is the cleanup of those buildings as well. So
When we look at point E, it'd be very difficult to put a parameter under E.
absolutely,
Okay.
this is all subjective. Clearly, it's subjective. And I'm only playing devil's advocate here. I'm not advocating one way or the other. But I just wanted to clarify to your point is that you mentioned the rules are in place for a reason, and that's true. But you have to be able to deviate for them, otherwise you need to take this waiver section out completely. Because that's the point of the waiver section is to be able to deviate in certain circumstances. So if you believe that there should never be any deviations from the zoning ordinance, then this doesn't belong in the ordinance.
I concur with what Megan is saying, that the trade-off for the extra size will be taking the nonconformities away. That overhang on the back, and then 2 other sheds that are in non-compliance now,
And having a nicer looking building.
and having a nicer looking building. That's actually the precedent and the trade-off, as far as I'm concerned.
The overkill is an increase in size.
Yeah, that's the only
that's where I have
that's
trouble.
the only sticky point.
Not the concept, not 100 or 200 square feet. Way beyond. So where do we draw the line with the next request? And
You want to relax the rules, Bill, and let the petitioner,
what was that then?
let the petitioner speak? He
Sure.
just raised his hand. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify with you, you probably don't have a picture in front of you, but where the shop is now and the other 2 buildings are, kind of the reason that I took it to that point was the way that the driveway and everything else is laid out. I'm actually bringing the new building in on that. I'm actually not expanding it any farther than what that building is. So the void in between those buildings is that square footage that you're getting in the addition to the square footage that I have in the 2-car garage, the shed, and the overhang. It's that void, small void in between those 2 buildings now. And obviously one of them's only 20 feet deep, and now it's going to be 32 to match the other roof line. So I'm not going any farther out in a footprint. I'm basically using what's there for the pattern of the driveway. And it's going to be a foot in from where that is now, where it ends up. So that's how I came up with that. I just didn't want you to think that I was just trying to build a gymnasium or something like that. I just kind of used what was there. This is the way that would work out for me. It worked best. I did buy the property, because of those buildings. Or, I have stuff in them now. So I want to replace it, but make it look nicer. So I know across the street is Mosquito. You look across the street, 2 neighbors directly across the street both of their buildings exceed the size that I'm putting up. I know that is irrelevant, but just so you know, it's right there on that road. I'm looking at them. So what I'm putting up still isn't the size of those buildings that they have.
Let's see where I'm coming from. We have an ordinance. We have a reason for the ordinances. And the next person that comes in the door, the word precedent was used. That's always my biggest concern.
Yeah, I think that's specific to their situation and what they're going to do with it and how they're going to use it, I drive down the road, I see people with cars parked out in their front lawn, stuff all over the place. You'll never find that in my house. You won't see it right now. You never will. My stuff's put away. Those people maybe do need a big garage. They got to put their stuff away. So for the next guy, you got to weigh that out for them. But this is for me. I'm just trying to clean it up.
And I think, that you're concerned with precedent and what I do for a living, precedent is a big deal, it's a big thing. But I think in this situation, you have to also view that there's nobody here that's objecting to it. And if another person comes forward and wants the same size or similar size, and there's people that are objecting, then obviously that's something that can weigh in that decision and should be taken into consideration. But it seems like his neighbors aren't in favor of it, and there's nobody here tonight that's opposed to it. So doesn't seem like it's going to have a negative impact on anybody around him.
So, any more discussion? Is there a motion?
I would make a motion to approve the waiver subject to the conditions set forth in Sean's report.
And
clarification.
just to clarify, there's the one extra condition about removing the 2 sheds and then the overhang within 30 days of occupancy of the new addition.
And Sean, that'll be number what?
Number.
Will no sheds have to go
It'll
before
be-
construction?
The only thing I wouldn't have to is the overhang.
Can I have this?
That-
Okay.
I'll rip it down tonight.
That's not what they're showing.
No, we've run into problems with people saying, yeah, we're gonna do that within 30 days, and 2 years later, they're still not there. We've got a situation like that, yeah. So, is there a second?
I realize that.
Motion's been made for a waiver modification, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any more discussion? Any more discussion? I think we've had some good discussion here. We have. Okay. All those in. I want a roll call vote on this.
Chairman Thomas Byrd,
Yes.
Commissioner Supervisor Bill Craig,
No.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner.
Yes.
Motion carries 3 in favor and 1 against.
The reason I want a roll call vote on that, so we don't forget we voted yes for that.
Can you just email me these minutes?
No, I understand where he's coming from.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have,
I understand completely.
Yeah.
And that's,
okay, yeah, because I want my minutes to match with your,
okay.
Nothing against you, I'm sorry.
So-
I get it.
What do we have to do with that then, Sean?
That's it.
He just-
So I'll issue the zoning permit,
The
and then
zoning.
the building permit would be issued after.
From
no,
Vince.
we'll do the deed restriction, everything that you say.
Come to the town board.
Nope, it's just plan commission.
All right, now we have an issue here. This is town board, town of Vernon
You're done.
board
Bye,
regarding
Jonathan.
non-substantial telecommunication and mobile tower modification request for Josh Edwards, DBA Wireless, located at West 256 South 7680 Paradise Drive, Waukesha. Sean?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is similar to the one that was before you last month. This is a non-substantial modification to the telecommunication tower at Morningstar Golf Club. What they're proposing to do is to replace some antennas on top and some equipment associated with the antennas, and then install some breakers in the power plant itself. Non-substantial modifications require an application. I deemed it was complete as of August 17th. That determination needs to be made within 5 days of submittal of the application. Right now, our ordinance requires that this is approved by the Plan Commission and the board. The petitioner has provided information. They've written an application describing the basis that it is not a substantial modification per state statutes. Because the tower height will not be increased, no additional support structures are being added, and the square footage of the existing equipment area will not be increased based on what they are doing. So that's how it falls under the non-substantial modification provisions of the state statutes. You have to approve or deny within 45 days of receipt of the complete application, which again was August 17th. If the Plan Commission and board choose to approve this, I have established 4 standard conditions as part of my staff report.
Okay. It says determination here. It says the town board, upon receipt of recommendation from it, shall make a decision on the application within a reasonable time. So we do need a recommendation from the Plan Commission. There is not one outstanding out there? Because I wasn't at the last Plan Commission.
No, this is the first time it's come before.
Yeah, a new one similar to the one last month.
Okay. So we do need a recommendation from Plan Commission, whether to accept or deny.
Correct.
Okay. Plan
I'll
Commission?
make that motion, to recommend to the town board
The non-substantial modification.
non-substantial modification.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Karen, could you read back the motion, please?
The motion was made by Commissioner Merle Wagner and seconded by Commissioner Megan Johnson, indicating that they concurred that it is a non-substantial telecommunication modification at the request of the petitioner.
Thanks.
So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Bill, you have anything that you want to add? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. So, there's a recommendation from the Plan Commission to the Town Board. Any questions that you want to ask, or?
Just looks like this is an upgrade in technology. Basically, that's all they're doing. They're not changing the overall effect of the tower. They're just adding new technology to it. As time goes by, I think we're going to see this in more and more towers that come along. So I have no problem with this at all.
Is that your motion?
That's a motion, yes, to accept the Plan Commission's recommendation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. All right, Plan Commission approval of minutes from August 11th. Bill was acting chairman. And absent. So, any corrections, additions?
No, I didn't see any.
Bill, you act shocked. And Megan was there.
I can't deny I was there.
You know, we may have to table this because Megan and Bill are the only ones here. Jeff is not here to approve this.
Yeah.
You don't have a quorum.
You don't have to be in attendance to approve minutes.
Tom can't vote for it.
I can't.
You have to
vote
wait till
for
the,
it.
no.
The only one that can vote for it is Megan and Merle.
You
That's
gotta have
only
a quorum.
two. We gotta have three.
Merle wasn't there either.
Oh, wait a minute.
So Merle.
Bill was
were-
right. You got Bill, Merle, and 3 out of 5.
I wasn't at the
Merle
meeting.
wasn't there.
Oh!
So then-
Merle and I were absent.
I was
I
there.
think you gotta prove it.
I guess you're right.
It doesn't bother me. If there's no mistake, we'll put it back on.
Yeah, just put it on for
Yeah.
next time.
Okay.
Table it, like a
All
freebie.
Adjournment of Plan Commission. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Adjournment of Plan Commission.
Megan did a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Plan Commission is adjourned. Adjournment of Town Board.
I think a motion adjourned.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
This way too.